Copilot, Copilot, Copilot. Yeah, that's right. I said it. And Beetlejuice didn't show up or Satya. And so just like them not showing up, one of the challenges we're seeing with Microsoft Ignite is that there's lots of Copilot announcements, like thousands of them, but a lot of them are in the future. They are coming soon, whatever soon might mean, or like Copilot for Office, it's been released, but only to like 15 people. And so that causes a lot of confusion. So what I want to do is make a very practical video of the things you can use Copilot for today, right? So what works right now? So we're going to jump into my regular old tenant and I'm going to show you all the different places you can be using Copilot because it really is empowering and it's really stuff you need to start using. Even if you're like, Shane, I can do all the things it can do. Great. Copilot keeps getting more awesome. Don't you wish you were using it right now to get more familiar with it? So I want to show you the things and the places that it exists today. Like it let me build a bunch of stuff in Power BI that I don't know how to build. And so, or Power Pages. And I want you to see that. So that's what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through and show you all the places you can use it today. And we'll worry about the things that are coming in the future when the future shows up. Sound like fun? Well, then let's switch over to my desktop and do things we can actually do with Copilot. All right, let's just start with PowerApps, right? Because I love PowerApps. And so PowerApps, as you know, like when you land on the home screen, there it is, big old box. And this is Copilot. If I put something in here like this description right here, please create me an app for tracking sales data, blah, 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 blah. Give it details, right? Good prompting. We talked about that in other places. We're going to talk about that today. Then that is going to suggest a table. So it's going to create a sample table. I'm going to look at it. I can then edit that table using words. And then when I'm done, I say go, and it will spit us out an app, right? So let's fast forward through that real quick, right? I hit this. There you go. It spit out a table. I could then use words to change it. We're not even going to bother with that. We're just going to click on create app down here in the bottom right corner. And boom, less than a minute later, I've got a fully responsive app with a backend Dataverse table all set to go. I could publish this thing and start using the app right now. So that's one of the Copilots. Secondly, over here on the right, we've got a new Copilot that helps us build the app, right? And if you look down here at the bottom, like the suggestions are always a great place to start, but it's like, hey, I can add a button, I can add an email screen, etc. So we could just say add a button. And look, there's the button right there. And so it's created a button. And if you don't have these to click on, right, then you always have the option of saying something like, please create me a red button. Press enter on that. Look at that. It made a red button. So, once again, like we talk about, you need to play with the things. Like it doesn't tell you it can make red buttons. I just tried it one day and found out I could make a red button. You need to be playing with this tool and using it, right? But this is, the next level of editing where we're going to use words to edit our app. So that's another way. The third way, let's just create a new screen, right? So we'll just ask Copilot, please create a new screen. Boom, a new screen. And now we'll just go up here and we'll say insert. And we're going to throw the Copilot control on the screen because this is the last of the PowerApps Copilots I want to hit on this little get-go. And so then this we can connect into our data. So we'll just connect it straight into that sales data that we just created about all the different things. And now my users can start asking questions about it. So one of the things, if you're going to use this control, make sure that you're going over here on the right and setting up the data description. Tell it about the data, what it is. That is going to give it more context to make it better at answering your users' questions. But there you go. So there's a bunch of ways that we can get started with Copilot and PowerApps. Also keep in mind, let's just get out of here. Back over here, if we come in here and we are using things like start with data. And so if you upload an Excel file, this is going to process that through Copilot. So Copilot is helping there. If you're in an app and you build a table, that's going to use Copilot. If you go over here and make a table, right, you can use to describe a table here. So you can just build a table. So maybe you don't want to describe a table and have it build an app like I just showed. But a lot of times when I'm starting, I do want to describe a table. I know what I need the table. I can just use words to tell it what the table is, what the column should be, and then have it create that sample data in there that's going to make it easier for me to go build an app around. So describe a new table. I'm actually using this one a lot more than using the describe a table and build an app. I don't really need the app, but I do need the Copilot table. Also in PowerApps, you're going to see starting to show up like over in the preview. If you build a formula column, right? So in Dataverse, there's this type of column, PowerFX formula column. They're now using Copilot there to help you build that with words. So that's pretty cool. So you're going to see Copilot sneak in there. And then that Copilot for the users, that's going to start showing up whether you add it to the app or not, but that's not quite here. So we're not going to look at that. But there's a lot of cooler stuff that is still coming here. So be checking out the PowerApps side. Now, another piece we're going to check out from the screen, but is not technically just PowerApps, right? If you go here to more, remember, we have got the AI Hub, right? It used to be called AI Builder. They change names all the time. That's what they do. Remember, the Power Platform team's been doing AI since like 2019 when they first started rolling out the AI Builder stuff. And so I want you to make sure that you're thinking about this because these models that are in here, right? You can go and build your own models, your own prompts, all via AI Builder that's going to let you, leverage the things that it can already do today. So for example, if I click on AI models up here, So this is going to show me, right? Look, so you can do prompts, but they have their own section now, whatever, right? But it can do document processing, invoice processing. I've done a lot of videos over the years showing the different things that AI Builder can do, where you can just train it to even recognize our little Chewy toys here and then count the number of those in a picture, right? There's a lot of that capability that's already here that you aren't waiting on Copilot. The AI Builder stuff can already do that today. So be sure that you're looking at that. This stuff is old hat, right? Like 2019, we started with this. But the fact that we can, do all this receipt processing, invoice processing, sentiment analysis, all of that without really doing much work is pretty powerful. So check those features out if you haven't. Next on our whirlwind tour is Power Automate. And so Power Automate, same type of thing. Up here at the top, you can just describe your flow. Remember, when you're describing your flow, if you think more about what your flow needs to do and the actions that you would put in there, you can do a better job of prompting it. So I've made a whole video on that. We're not going to walk our way through that, but I want you to think about that. I also want you to be leveraging these capabilities up here. Like if you're struggling with what to do, then use one of the suggestions and just see what it spits out, right? Like, so let's just try this. When a new item is created in SharePoint, send me an email. Let's just take its prompt. So look, it's like, hey, this is a suggested flow. If you don't like it or you want to add to it, come up here and start using words to continue to refine it. But we're just going to take what it gave us. We can also show different suggestions. That helps me a lot. So we're going to say next. It's going to validate that I'm cool connecting to these services. I am. So we're going to say create the flow, and boom, we're in the new studio. So here, we've got this whole new interface for Power Automate. We've got all the stuff over on the left. Remember, you can use words over here on the right though. So if I wanted to add an action, I can just go over here and tell it to, right? I can be like, please add a SharePoint HTTP action. And if we press that, boom, there you go, right? It's added that in there, and now it's telling me, hey, you got invalid parameters. So I'd click in there, I got to fill in the information, right? This is not about building flow, so we're not gonna do that, but you can see it. Now, I do want to point out two things here because I got this question last time I presented this topic. One, what if I want to get rid of this? This is just taking up a bunch of space and I don't want to use it. Well, sad for you, but you can, right? You can hit the X. The same when we were in PowerApps, you could have hit the X. Also, as of right now, if you really are struggling with the studio, up here at the top, we have the ellipses and we can say switch to classic designer. And this will let us, save and switch, which will let us, well, it would let us save, but my flow has errors. So you can't save and flow with errors. But if I didn't have errors, I could hit save and switch it, save the flow, and then it would open in the old designer. The old designer, the classic designer is going to go away sooner than later. So try to push yourself off of it. But if you just need to switch today, because you just got to get something done, then a few people have asked me how to do that. So I wanted to make sure you knew that, right? So to switch without saving. And so there you go, right? Remember, I didn't say that's one of the HTTP actions gone, but now we'd be back in the Power Automate. We can do that. Also remember that Power Automate is your gateway to a lot of this stuff, right? Like if we search for Copilot, right? So it can respond to a Copilot. So it already has a piece for that. And then all of the AI builder stuff, that's really where I end up leveraging a lot of this stuff. There's all the different AI builders. So if I want to have it every time a document gets added to SharePoint, we go pass it through the imaging processing model over there that we just talked about. Boom, we can do that. So Power Automate, very helpful. You're also going to see with Power Automate that your desktop flows are going to get AI very soon. You're also going to see some more capabilities to analyze, like what flows are broken, flow run activity, things like that. All kind of starting to show up over here. We're not worried about all that because that's in the future, but I just thought you might want to know. Okay, and I think that wraps up Power Automate. So let's switch to our next one. Hey, if you enjoy this practical look at AI and Copilot, right? So I'm going to do this for ChatGPT and Claude and DALL-E and all those fun things. Then I've got 5 new classes coming. 2 are free, 3 are paid. And so if you want to check those out, just go to the URL up on the screen, right? It's training.powerapps.com/pages/coming soon. Terrible URL, but what do you do? And you can go there and then you can fill in your name here. You'll get notified when the class is released and get a discount for kind of showing interest in the classes ahead of time. But those are going to start rolling out this month and going to roll into the first quarter. So Copilot training from a practical point of view, that's this guy. All right, anyway, back to over the video. All right, so Power Pages. I'm not gonna lie, I'd never built a Power Page until yesterday. And I was like, hey, they say I can do it with Copilot, so can I? So I came in here and I threw in some words and said, hey, make me a site for a football card manager, right? Right, so same type of thing. We can use words to do it and kind of started walking me through, ask me some questions that help me get to my site, templates, things like that. But if we say edit, we're gonna see my real ugly site, but Power Pages might be the product where this is in the most places, right? Like I found out, like if I come in here, like if I click on this, manager collection with ease, click on this text, look, there's a Copilot button here. And then be like, hey, rewrite that, change the tone, make it more educational. And it's going to auto suggest some text and say, hey, there you go. That'd be better. I say replace text and boom. And so I thought this was amazing. It's like basically everywhere inside of Power Pages that they've got this stuff. And if I think about like, so PowerApps911.com, we use Wix because, well, we've used Wix for years. And I would love that, right? If I could go into those terrible headlines that I've written and be like, hey, Copilot, help me do this. Today, I have to kind of copy and paste those over to ChatGPT and, get help that way. But the fact that this stuff is just integrated in here is really just, but that's all right. It gets even cooler. So I was like, you know what would be really cool is I want to add a contact form here, right? So I just went over to their little assistant, which we've kind of seen before, but I'm going to say, add me a contact form to the page, hit enter, and look at this insanity. It's like, oh, I have a different Copilot to help you with that, right? And so it's going to create us a form through natural language. And then when I'm done, right? So there you go. So it's like, hey, here's a contact form. So it just made one. And if I'm good with this, the same thing, I could run with it. Like last time I did this, I said, get rid of all the fields except for name, email, and zip code, right? I just want to see what it would do. Look at that. So it updated it, right? And this is very similar. It feels very much like our PowerApps one. So our skills are transferring. And then what's really amazing is when I'm done, I'm happy with this. Then I say, okay, it's going to create the Dataverse table under the hood to store this data. And then it's just going to plop it on the page for us. So let's say, okay. And so after a minute, look, it's added it to the thing. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like, this is crazy to me. And I mean, it shouldn't be at this point, but the fact that like Power Pages went from a platform that I had a disdain for, quite frankly, to I realize now that with these new toolings, I can do a lot, right? It's still going to get to the point where if I want to do some fancy customizations, almost all the customer projects we do for this end up requiring a little bit of pro code, like some JavaScript, TypeScript, I don't know, one of those type of things in here to make it do all the things. But the fact that I could build a working site with a contact form and, get my information, my pictures, my data out here with Copilot basically doing all the work is pretty cool to me. So check this one out. We need to make more content, right? Like yell at me in the comments that I should do more Power Pages videos. I probably should, but you guys haven't told me that. All right, that last big product is now what we call Copilot Studio. We used to call this thing Power Virtual Agents. What they did basically is they said, Power Virtual Agents does like a lot of what we need, right? We want people to build their own Copilots, right? Or in ChatGPT, we call them build their own GPTs. And so they realized that Power Virtual Agents basically did most of that. So they kind of took Power Virtual Agents and then superpowered it. So don't just think that they rebranded Power Virtual Agents as Copilot Studio. I mean, they did. Power Virtual Agents doesn't exist anymore. It is now Copilot Studio, but they put a whole bunch of stuff on here. And the way to think about it is they kind of did, in the short term, they did really two things, right? One is that if you're over here, like when I create a Copilot now, so let's go to this one, all things animals in Canada. I built this one yesterday, actually, or I've been working on it all week, but I kind of got it pretty close yesterday. So with this one, look, now over here on the left, we've got this whole idea of generative AI. And so this is where I can take a chatbot and I can start to augment it. So I've built a site. Well, Quentin made a site for Canadian facts because he's Canadian. And then I made one animals of the world because I'm simple and I like penguins and tigers and sharks. But we made a couple of SharePoint sites. We connected in that data. I created a shark information table and connected that in. So not only can we connect public websites, SharePoint, OneDrive, that type of stuff, right? Like when you go to add here, there's a bunch of things you can add. But we can also just add static documents that it'll have access to. And so then now, if I ask it questions that I haven't generated topics around, then bingo, bango, it is going to pull from these resources and try to answer them for me based on my settings here. Now, keep in mind that I use ChatGPT to make all this fake data because I wanted to make it really quick. But you basically go to ChatGPT and say, hey, make me a table of the top 10 sharks with these columns, and make it an Excel file. And a minute later, it spit that table out and I just uploaded it. So remember that, like if you're trying to create sample data, ChatGPT is very helpful for that. Okay, now I will be honest, like to set it up so it could talk to SharePoint, it is a little bit tricky. You have to do a bunch of Azure configuration stuff that was a little tricky. So I'll put a link in the documentation down in the description if you want to go read that. I probably should just make a video that walks through it because it was hard. It took Quentin and I a few tries to get it, but once you get it all set up, it works great. And so this is one side of it, and let's go chat with the bot real quick. So let's do that. So now because it's using SharePoint data, when I go to talk to the bot, I have to log in first. So I'll hit login. It just spits out a code. We'll say copy. We just go over here and we paste back in the code. So now we've logged in. So now we're authenticated. And now I could just be like, hey, what do you know about penguins? And so look, it gives me a summary of what it knows about penguins, and it tells me where it's getting the information from because it's coming from my document that is over in the SharePoint site. So I'm able to kind of see where the data comes from, the citations. So giving me a little bit more faith that it didn't just make up stuff about penguins. This is actually out of our data set. So you could point it at your HR policies, your code of conduct, your shipping FAQs, whatever information, your customer docs, whatever information you wanted to read and understand so your users can interact with. And because you're doing this, you can embed this through Copilot Studio. I can embed this in a website. I can embed this over in Teams. If you've got Microsoft Copilot at this point, you can use this to change how Microsoft Copilot works. There's a lot of things that Copilot Studio is bringing to the table now, all using the same simple concepts we've always known with PVA, but now we've got more, right? Because I said superpowers. So like it's going to have plugins, or it has plugins now, so it can talk to other things, so we can trigger actions. There's so much you can do here. Like we're just scratching the surface. But I wanted you to understand that a lot of you have already asked about like, hey, I want to be able to chat with my SharePoint data. You can set that up right now. That's not a future thing. That's a right now thing. Go set that up. Let's switch over here. A couple more things to look at. So also keep in mind, like when you're creating topics, so when we go to add a topic now, we can use Microsoft Copilot to help us with that. Or sorry, it's a plugin topic. I can use create from description. So you do topics in here. And so then now if I go in, when I go to create a new topic, so instead of saying just have generic conversations, I want to have a specific conversation, the old way where you kind of put the little blocks in of like, hey, ask this, then think about this, then do this condition, right? Like you still build those where you want to have a regimented, inline conversation, right? Maybe if they ask you like, what is our corporate policy on PTO? You don't want it to go read the PTO documents and say something. You want it to go and say exactly these things and point them to a specific place because you have a very prescriptive conversation that they should have around time off versus, if they want to understand, what are time off uses and things like that, you want the documentation to augment those conversations. So remember, you're going to mix and match in an ideal Copilot of both static conversations and generative conversations. And so this is helping me, this is using generative AI to help me build a static conversation, right? Because if I click on, let's someone order a pizza, I don't know, and then we'll give it a name, your topic of pizza. And so look, so this is building me a actual standard conversation topic like we've always had. So keep that in mind. Also, when you're over here, if you want to augment this with information from the Papa John's website, right? Like maybe up here, we want to, I don't know, somewhere right here, we're going to add that. So when you come in here, also keep in mind that you can say advanced and generative answers. So in the middle of your structured conversation, you might want to say, hey, I want you to do generative, and I want you just to use this one piece, right? Because you saw on the generative side, we added all those different things. But if I wanted to, do generative answers here, then I can set the data sources. And so I could give it a specific website. So I could put the Papa John's website right here. And so it would just use that to, answer questions that were coming in here. Like, you got to create the input and all that. Like, you've got more, but I want you to understand that you can, have completely wide open conversations. You can have completely specific conversations, or you can have a conversation that is a medley of specific and generative at the same time, right? There's so much power to be unlocked here. So once again, it's probably another topic we need to do a very long video on. Or remember my training classes, like we're going to introduce some of this and we're going to get into more of the details in there. So go check out one of those too. Okay, there's one more thing I want to cover. I wasn't going to, but we are, so let's cover it real quick. So if we go over to Bing and do, PowerApps training, right? Like, you always want to search for that, or PowerApps 901 training, and we hit enter. So it gets dropped over here. One of the things that you need to understand is that when you're in Bing now, if you are logged into Bing, right? So I'm logged in with my Shane at PowerApps901.com account. If I go to chat, then this is using Bing Chat Enterprise, which they're renaming to Copilot without any qualifiers. It's super confusing. What's important to understand is that when you are in here, you see my data is protected, right? My personal and company data are protected in this chat because I have Bing Chat Enterprise, or Copilot as they call it, in my account today. A lot of you probably already have this and just aren't realizing it because you're not using Bing or you're not using Edge as your browser, but a lot of us can take advantage of this right now. So please be looking on the lookout for that, because if you've got this, right, like this is using GPT-4, it's connected to the internet. It's got all those cool things. It can make images. A lot of the stuff that we're using ChatGPT plus for, you have in Bing Chat Enterprise or Copilot today. So please be checking that out. Like, it's already here for a lot of you. Also, one of the things that we're not doing enough of, so if we turn off this whole little F11 thing, so up here on the right, because I'm using Edge, I can bolt this in. And so then now Bing Chat Enterprise is with me on every page I go to. So keep this in mind, because this Bing Chat tool here, it sees the pages you're on. So like if we go to a specific web page, and so like this is all of the PowerApps 901 blog, and like so if I go to this page and I'm like, whoa, Shane wrote a whole lot, like tell me what this is. So over here on the right, I can just be like, generate me a page summary. And so it's reading the web page that's in my browser. It doesn't matter if this page is part of my tenant, part of my SharePoint. Like I can have it read my Outlook emails. I'm using Outlook in the browser, but it sees what I see. And so now me and it can have a conversation. So using Copilot, aka Bing Chat Enterprise with Edge, is a really awesome thing that I don't think a lot of you are doing. And a lot of you didn't even realize that you probably already have access to this today. You just need to log into Bing with your account and be using the Edge browser if you want to use this guy on the right. So there you go. That's a breakdown of all the things that you can be doing today with the Power Platform and Copilot, plus a little bonus one there. But I wanted you all to kind of be exposed because these are the nows. We've got future things coming, so we are excited about those. I can't wait for some of those, but I wanted to get that stuff we can do right now. Also, if this interests you, go check out my training options, right? I've got 5 training classes coming out of this. I plan to create a lot of, really good in-depth content that is like this. It is practical. It's not pie in the sky stuff. It is practical things that you can do with AI. We're going to teach ChatGPT. We're going to teach how to be better at prompting. We're going to teach about Copilot. We're going to teach about all the Copilots in Power Platform, how to be good with those. And eventually, when I'm one of the lucky people that can actually use the Microsoft Copilot, we'll have a class on that as well, right? So check out our content. If there's more stuff you want to see, if you saw this, you're like, Shane, why aren't you doing more Power Pages? Or why aren't you doing more Copilot Studio? Leave them below. I read all of those comments. And finally, hit the like and subscribe button, please. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day.